Hey guys, this is the second episode today looking at all the recent trade speculation surrounding the Warriors, of which there's been plenty of over recent days. In the earlier episode today, I looked at the burning issues facing the Warriors on the court, in particular, their offensive struggles. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POC252, that's POK252 on X/Twitter. Other than that, let's get into it. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Let's jump straight into it because there's been so much trade speculation surrounding the Warriors over recent days. In fact, it's pretty hard to remember or recall a time where this many players have been linked to the Warriors in a kind of 72, 96-hour stretch than what we've seen here over the last few days. It's quite unbelievable. Like, obviously during the offseason we had the Paul George, the Larry Markin and stuff, but usually it was like, those two players, one or two here and there elsewhere. But this is like 5, 6, 7, 8 players that like have all been linked to the Warriors in some way or another in various reports over recent days. It's quite crazy, and there's so much going on that it's actually kind of hard to get your head around. It's hard to kind of analyze and determine where the Warriors should go here. I'm going to try and make sense of it, but it actually is really difficult because you look at the Warriors right now and you think they actually need a trade fairly soon here to try and right the ship, obviously, with their 2-7 stretch over the last 9 games. And that's part of it. But then the other part of it is, hey, there seems to be a lot going on. There seems to be a lot of players that the Warriors are linked to on the trade market. Do they have to wait a little bit and actually flush out all the different deals they could make to then be able to make the right one, basically, to get the best possible value rather than necessarily rushing into something? Because obviously we've got the December 15 date coming here on Sunday. That is going to open up a lot more flexibility for not just the Warriors, but so many other teams, with over 80 players that's signed as free agents during the offseason being able to be traded. The biggest one of those, obviously, from a Golden State perspective, is DeAnthony Melton, and the fact that as of Sunday, he will be trade eligible, him and his $12.8 million contract, which is clearly a big piece for the Warriors in trying to match salaries. Let's start off with the big dogs here, with a couple of the all-stars that the Warriors have been linked to, because clearly you can look at these last 9 games, the offensive struggles that the Warriors have been going through, which I spoke extensively about in the first episode today. The fact the Warriors are 28th in offensive rating over the last 9 games, 29th in offensive rating in fourth quarters. Their real issue in terms of late game offense. Clearly, you look at that and you think this team needs another go-to guy, needs another go-to scorer that they can put the ball in the hands of down the stretch of games and be able to execute offense for them without being able, like too many times, and we saw it on Wednesday against the Rockets, where the Warriors had multiple turnovers late in the game. They had a couple of 24-second shot clock violations. They still try and run all their actions, all their, split cut actions, high player, high ball movement style late in games, where often that just doesn't really work. And oftentimes it comes down to, have you got a talented enough offensive player where you can just put the ball in their hands and they will make a play for you, whether it's drawing a double team and kicking out and finding an open shooter and getting open looks that way, or simply beating a guy off the dribble, Steph Curry step back threes, whatever it may be. Do the Warriors need another one of those guys other than just Steph, who's obviously been struggling a little bit himself, as I referred to in the first episode as well, with him averaging 23 points on less than 40% shooting over the last 9 games. So a couple of the All-Stars have been mentioned too. Clearly, number one, Jimmy Butler. Now, we had that kind of blockbuster report from Shams earlier in the week talking about that Miami Heat being open to listening to offers for Jimmy Butler, and it seems like there's a good chance of him being traded somewhere prior to the February 6th deadline. Now, whether that's the Warriors or not, there seems to be some mutual interest there based on recent reports in terms of Jimmy being open to joining Steph and Draymond and coming to the Warriors, and the Warriors obviously being open to bring in Jimmy Butler, having had interest during the offseason as well. I don't know. This one, to me, with Jimmy Butler, I'm still not sold on it whatsoever. There's a number of factors here, number of potential negatives that would probably make the cost just too much for me. Jimmy's on a $48.8 million contract. Clearly, you'd have to give up multiple players, probably some picks in there as well to make that happen. I'm not sure going from, like, the way I look at it is it's probably going to be, it's definitely going to be Wiggins. Like, he'd definitely have to be included in the Jimmy Butler trade. And it's probably going to be Kuminga as well, because if you're bringing Jimmy Butler in, you're saying that you're going to pay him what he wants in free agency, which is probably a max. You're not going to re-sign Jimmy Butler if he opts out of his player option and do that while also re-signing Jonathan Kuminga as a restricted free agent. You're not going to do that. And so a trade is probably going to include Wiggins and Kuminga. And that, for me, straight up, is like, do I really want to do that, Wiggins and Kuminga, for Butler? Because Butler is 19 points a game, 5-6 rebounds, 5 assists, had a pretty decent year shooting the ball, particularly last season where he was a career high. But Wiggins and Kuminga can also give you nearly 20 points a game. And yes, I know late game, you want the ball in Jimmy Butler's hands way more than you do Kuminga and Wiggins. And that's certainly part of it, is that late game situations where the Warriors have obviously struggled, as talented as Kuminga and Wiggins are offensively, you still have I don't have much faith when you've got those guys in one-on-one situations with the ball in their hands. Can they execute at a high rate? I still have question marks. I don't particularly hold too much faith. Would I feel a lot more comfortable if it was Jimmy Butler in that situation? Yeah, absolutely. Come playoff time, would you really want to have Jimmy Butler over Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga? Yeah, absolutely you would. But for the present and future of the team, he's giving up both those guys plus additional assets. Like Melton would be thrown in, obviously, as part of that salary, but you might have to throw a pick in there as well. It just gets really difficult. It's probably going to have to be a third team involved, given the hard cap situations with both teams. Just making a deal for Jimmy Butler is extremely, extremely difficult, and one that I just don't think is going to be viable enough or productive enough for the Warriors, have the upside for the Warriors in order for them to be able to make that deal. He's 35 years old. He's got an injury history. You're going to have to pay him big money to re-sign him in free agency. Where does that ultimately lead you? When you've got Andrew Wiggins on a pretty good contract, who's much younger, you've got a younger Jonathan Kuminga who you're trialing out here to see if he can be that star player for you. There's too many. When you look at the contract, you look at the age, you look at the injury history, the slight decline in Jimmy Butler that we've seen in the last 12 to 18 months. I'm just not sure. Yes, there would be some positives to come out of it, absolutely, but I'm not sure it's really the kind of move you want to be making, and whether it has the upside. Do the Warriors jump into championship contention with Jimmy Butler over having Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga and whatever else? I just don't know. And then the biggest part of it is just re-signing him in free agency. He's going to want max money, and you look at the 76ers just signing Paul George, and I've spoken about the Warriors dodging a bullet there, and actually, the Clippers not being willing to trade Paul George because the Warriors would have extended him and given him, a 4-year, $220 million extension, which obviously Philly ended up giving him as a free agent. And now that looks like not a great deal. And you're paying him, $50 plus million at age 38, 39. Do you want to be doing that with Jimmy Butler? I don't think so. And so that's the issue for mine, is just that contract situation. One, it makes it really difficult to make a trade right now. But two, do you want to be paying that? Someone will pay it. And so you're probably going to be forced to do so in free agency. I'm not sold. I'm not sold on Jimmy Butler. It would fix some areas of weakness in terms of getting another star, in terms of the late game offense. It would clearly make you a more dangerous team come the playoffs. So I have no doubt about that with Jimmy. You're not going to lose too much defensively, I don't think, going from Wiggins to Butler, although it's probably not that much of an upgrade either. I don't know. I don't see it. I've really struggled to find a trade for a star player. You've got to be really a top 10, 15 player in the league for me to be giving up this version of Andrew Wiggins for you. And I'm not sure Butler is that anymore. Maybe he is come the playoffs, and maybe that's what the Warriors could talk themselves into. But there have been the reports that the Warriors aren't sold on giving up Andrew Wiggins for Jimmy Butler. And clearly he has to be included in order to reach that salary. So I just don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to be ultimately willing to give up Andrew Wiggins for Jimmy Butler and the other assets that would be required on top of that for the Heat to want to make the move as well. I don't know. I find it difficult. The other one is LeBron. Now, this is worth mentioning because Brian Windhorst, who, is obviously goes a long way back with LeBron, he's been very heavy on this over the past week, talking about it in various media interviews and stuff like that, talking about the Warriors still wanting to have, that dream situation of pairing LeBron with Steph and Draymond. And, obviously LeBron is on leave at the moment from the Lakers, and the Lakers haven't had a great start to the season. And LeBron's form recently did have a couple of big games most recently, but other than that, he went that stretch where he missed 23s in a row. So his form, not surprisingly, he's in year 22 at nearly 40 years old, maybe on the decline somewhat. I don't know. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. If you're watching this on YouTube, in the comments, let me know down below. Would you rather Jimmy Butler or LeBron James if the Warriors were to trade for one of those two guys? I would much prefer LeBron. Now, there's a couple of factors in that. First of all, I think just the idea of LeBron James and Steph Curry on the same team would be really scary for opposing teams. Yes, those guys might not be in their prime anymore, but if you reach the playoffs and you've got a team with LeBron and Steph on it, that just brings an intimidation factor, I think, that is worth something. That just, if you're the opposing team in a playoff series and you look across the other side of the court and there's the two best players of this generation wearing the same jersey, that means something. That would mean something to me. It's like in the Olympics where there's so many great players on that Team USA Olympic squad, so many young guys, Anthony Edwards, guys like this who, as superstar young players. And yet when it came down to it, it was still LeBron and Steph. It was still those guys running the show, running the team. And I feel like there's a part of it where those guys still run the league to a degree. And so if you pair them up together, there's an intimidation factor, I think, that comes, even though those guys aren't in their primes necessarily anymore. They're, come the playoffs, they'll be 40 and 37 years old. So clearly Butler and LeBron make similar money salary-wise. In terms of LeBron, not just the intimidation factor, I think he's a better on-court fit. I think his ball handling, his playmaking, I think might be a better fit than Jimmy Butler. I also think his contract moving forward is you're going to have a much better situation there than you are with Jimmy. So again, clearly making very similar amounts this season, but LeBron has a $52.4 million player option for next season. He can opt out of that. The big factor here is he has a no trade clause. And so if he does want out of LA, he can basically just angle his way to whatever. He can just decide what team he wants to go to and say to the Lakers, well, you either trade me there or I'm just leaving for agency for nothing. And so as a result, the leverage the Lakers are going to have is very minimal, as opposed to the Heat, who obviously Butler doesn't have a trade clause Butler doesn't have a no trade clause or anything. So clearly the Heat can just try and go out and get the best offer they possibly can get, as opposed to the Lakers would just have to be basically beholden to what LeBron wants. And there have been the reports that if LeBron was to want to leave LA, that the Lakers would try and accommodate that while trying to get the best possible deal for themselves. But again, that's difficult if LeBron says, well, you can only trade me to this team or one of those two teams or whatever else it may be. So if he specifically wanted to get to Golden State, what the Warriors would have to give up. Now, clearly, again, you have to give up Andrew Wiggins. You have to get that salary matching down pat. But in terms of assets you'd have to give up, it's probably less for LeBron than it would be for Jimmy. Then come free agency, if LeBron was to opt out, I think there's a much better or much improved opportunity for LeBron to opt out and actually take less. And as the Warriors, you could actually almost have some leverage in this as well, because Anthony Irwin of Clutch Points reported that any LeBron trade that would happen would probably include Bronny as well, and they're a kind of a package duo, which makes some sense. And I don't think the Warriors were reportedly interested in Bronny their 52nd overall pick in the draft. So I'm sure that Bronny James is not going to get in the way of any team trading for LeBron if they really want it. If they want LeBron James, then Bronny as the second part of the package isn't going to be an issue. So the Warriors, if they wanted LeBron, which still sounds like the dream, the dream is to pair LeBron with Steph and Draymond, reportedly, according to Windhorst. If that's the case, then they're going to be more than willing to take Bronny on as well. And if that's the case, and they've got Bronny James on the roster, who's under contract for another 3 years after this one. He got a 4-year rookie deal. Then you could almost say to LeBron, well, okay, we're going to kind of bluff you to a degree. Like, we don't think you're going to leave us after. It doesn't feel to me as if LeBron requested a trade to the Warriors specifically and got traded to the Warriors in early February, I don't think he'd pack up and leave as a free agent. I think he'd have the remainder of the season, then he'd re-sign on probably 1-year deals from there. I just don't see him doing that. As Jimmy, I could actually see him getting up and leaving as a free agent. Like, I could see that. He kind of did that already with the Philly situation where he was in Philly for less than a full season and then packed up and left to go to Miami because Philly decided to pay Tobias Harris instead. So I could see, like, Jimmy, and that's the thing. If you traded for Jimmy, you'd have to be absolutely sure that you want to pay him the max, because anything less than that, I think he'd walk. LeBron, I just don't see him getting up and walking as a free agent if he specifically angled his way to the Warriors come before the February deadline. I just don't see that. And as the Warriors, you'd say, well, we've got your son on the roster. Do you really want to pack up and leave him as well and go somewhere else? I just don't think that would be the case. I think there's going to come a point here. LeBron's going to be, he's year 22. He's going to be 40 years old. There's going to come a point here where LeBron's no longer on max contracts. I just don't think he's going to play the rest of his career on max contracts. I don't think that's going to be the case because I think he wants to win first and foremost, right? And I think we saw him opt out of his deal with the Lakers for this season and became a free agent and said to the Lakers, look, I'm happy to negotiate a lower number if it means we can bring someone in. And they tried to get Clay. And it was going to be a situation of them they actually offered Clay more than what the Mavericks did, reportedly. I think it was like $80 million over 4 years. And LeBron would have taken less to bring someone else in. And I think that would be a similar situation if LeBron got traded to the Warriors, is he could opt out and say, okay, you go see what you can do in free agency. And the other part of it is, you come to free agency, how many players would want to go and play on the same team as LeBron and Steph? There'd have to be a few. You'd have to be able to get some pretty good players on pretty cheap contracts who just want to be part of what would be an historical thing of having Steph and LeBron on the same team. There's an incentive and attractiveness about that could be really something. And as a result, again, LeBron could say, okay, we can bring these guys in. I'm happy to take less in order to put a championship team together. And so I just think there's a lot of factors at play here that make LeBron, I think, a more attractive trade target than Jimmy Butler. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. In terms of other things going on, Brooklyn, clearly a lot of chatter about potential Brooklyn Golden State trades at the moment. And come Sunday, December 15, the possibilities open up a lot more with Melton obviously becoming trade eligible, and even like Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, who are much less likely to be traded, although Kyle Anderson's played 12 minutes over the last 2 games. He's on $8-9 million. Is there a chance he just gets moved? I think he's less attractive to opposing teams because he's still got another 2 years left on his deal. He signed that 3-year contract. So he's not expiring like Melton is, not expiring like Looney, GP2R, Kuminga even, who's obviously going to be a restricted free agent in the offseason. So the Warriors have a lot of flexibility, maneuverability to make all kinds of different trades here, whether it be for Jimmy or LeBron, albeit a lot more difficult, or for like some of these Brooklyn guys, which I think, if you're looking at realistic, what's most likely, it's certainly, I think, a deal with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, Shams reported the Warriors have had interest in all of Schroeder, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Cam Johnson. Now, there's been sort of some various reports on which one of those guys the Warriors are truly prioritizing. Can you try and get 2 of those players? You're clearly not going to get all 3, but could you get a package of 2? Maybe. I don't know. The Schroeder one is the most simplest one. As of Sunday, the Warriors can just call up the Nets and say, here's Melton and a first-round pick for Dennis Schroeder. They can make that trade, right? And I think the Nets will take it. I think the Nets, they get a first-round pick for Schroeder. Absolutely, no worries. Done and dusted. That would fix a lot of holes for the Warriors. I like Schroeder. I've been off him previously, but I'm back on the Schroeder train. I think he's a good player. I think he could come play 25, 30 minutes a game. He could probably start. Like, the way this two-guard spot's looking, he could almost start next to Steph, honestly. Not even just be a six-man. Like, just start next to Steph. Probably handle the ball more than Steph. Let Steph get off the ball a little bit more. I don't know. Like, I think he's solid enough defensively, shooting the ball at a reasonable clip where you can start him. Clearly probably going to be in closing units. Makes your closing lineup a little bit more obvious with Steph, Schroeder, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond. I think that would just be obvious. The issue with that is, okay, what's Dennis Schroeder really doing for you? It's fixing some holes, but is it lifting you into championship contention? I don't know. Probably not. The other thing is, like, what would you miss out on? If you said we're using Melton's salary and a first-round pick for Schroeder, well, what if there's something else that becomes available? Like, if you just did that deal in the next couple of days, then sure, it fixes a few issues. But what if something better came along further in the next 4 to 6 weeks, and all of a sudden you couldn't make that trade anymore because you don't have Melton's salary to use and because you don't have that first-round pick that you might have needed for the trade? So that's the thing. Are the Warriors going to be willing to make a minor trade if it's really going to inhibit their ability to make a major trade? Because I still think they probably want to make a major trade for Butler or LeBron or something like that. But all of a sudden, if you go out and trade for Schroeder and use Melton's salary, then all of a sudden you can't really get to. It's very difficult to get to Jimmy Butler or LeBron James's contract. It's very difficult. And so that's going to be the big question mark here, is are they going to be willing to make a minor move that could impact their ability to make another one down the stretch, whether it be before the February 6th deadline or even during the offseason, depending on what first-round pick it is. Do you want to be giving up a first-round pick for Schroeder, who could just be a 2-3 month rental? Like, are you really going to be wanting to re-sign him in free agency? Is he going to want to re-sign at a team where he's clearly the backup point guard? I don't know. Again, maybe he can start next to Steph. With the way this two-guard spot's looking, he's probably the best option. So, I don't know. In terms of the other guys, Finney-Smith makes some sense, definitely. Cam Johnson's the other one, who I think, as a 6'8 shooter, clearly fits what the Warriors need. The thing with me for him is, like, there's been some kind of speculation going around about the Warriors getting both him and Schroeder. You just can't do that while keeping Wiggins. Like, I just find that really difficult. That's $36 million in salary you've got to get to. So that's Melton at 12.8, GP2, Looney, Kuminga, 4-for-2 trade, maybe. I don't know. Like, maybe you can try and get to that mark without giving up Wiggins, but it'd be really difficult without giving up Wiggins. And if it's giving up Wiggins, like, I'm just not doing it. Like, these trades that I've seen after that Shams report, and I think they're mostly coming from Brooklyn fans saying, yeah, let's give up. Oh no, it was Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, I think, had the trade proposal, which had Wiggins going to the Nets for, like, Cam Johnson, and then a bunch of picks thrown in as well from the Warriors side. It's like, whoa, hang on a second. The Warriors are literally giving up the better player and a bunch of picks. Andrew Wiggins is a better player than Cam Johnson. This version of Andrew Wiggins is a better version than Cam Johnson. A better player than Cam Johnson. He just is. He's a more valuable player to the Warriors as well. There's just no... I would be shocked. I would be shocked if the Warriors make a trade with the Brooklyn Nets that includes Andrew Wiggins. I'd be gobsmacked. I just don't think it will happen. I'll be disappointed if it happens, because I just don't think there's a world in which... Now, maybe you can say... I don't know. I'm not even trying... I can't even argue for it. I can't even argue for a Golden State-Brooklyn trade that includes Andrew Wiggins. I can't. It's really difficult. I don't know. Let alone, like, them wanting assets on top of that as well. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me, because I understand it from Brooklyn's perspective. They don't want to take on... They want expiring contracts. They want Melton, GP2, Looney, Kuminga, who they could have a look at for a few months and then decide whether they want to re-sign or not. Like, that's who they want. They don't want Wiggins necessarily. As good as he's been this season, he's making another $26, $28 million in each of the next 2 years. Like, they don't want that. They want to have flexibility in free agency to go out and sign guys. So I can understand their perspective. Like, they're not going to want Andrew Wiggins. And if they're going to take him on, they're going to want more assets. The Warriors just aren't going to do that. So it doesn't make people advocating or thinking that Andrew Wiggins is going to be part of a trade to the Brooklyn Nets. That's just not in reality to me. Like, that just can't happen for multiple reasons. But it's going to be fascinating to see, like, out of those three guys, clearly Schroeder is the obvious one. Cam Johnson would probably have the most impact, maybe. But even then, like, I think Schroeder feels a pretty decent hole in terms of he could start next to Steph and be the backup point guard, because if Steve's going to Pat Spencer for second quarter minutes in the NBA Cup quarterfinal, probably tells you he doesn't have a whole lot of faith in Brandon Podziemski right now. So Dennis, I think he might be the simplest and most effective one, but again, does it take you out of being able to make another major move down the track? I don't know, mate. I don't even know if I want to give up a first for Schroeder. I'd probably just, like, can we make it 2 seconds, please? Try and keep your first round picks stocked to, again, make a move at a different point. Siegel had another report earlier today as well, talking about the Butler stuff, the Brooklyn Nets stuff, and then mentioning a few other guys in relation to the Warriors as well. Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, Dante DiVincenzo, Vucevic, Kyle Kuzma, guys that we've all spoken about previously. I'm still on the Vucevic train to a degree. Like, the Warriors still need to work out what they're doing at the 5 spot. I'd still like to give Kuminga the opportunity to play alongside a stretch 5. I really would. And he's never been afforded that opportunity. Steph has very rarely been afforded the opportunity in recent years to actually have a stretch 5 out there. I don't see, I've spoken about it previously a lot. I just don't see the downside in making a deal of, like, Melton and GP2 and a couple of seconds for Vucevic and, like, Torrey Craig. I don't know, that would be the other thing is, like, Olynyk makes $13 million, so is it a case of, okay, we go out and get Schroeder and then we still got the assets to go and get Olynyk? Maybe we've got the assets to go and get Dante if all of a sudden he became available at the Timberwolves, which I don't think will happen, but maybe. Kuzma probably makes too much, where if you traded for Schroeder, you probably couldn't go out and then necessarily be able to match salary for Kuzma, who's making like $23 million. Bruce Brown's, I just have no interest in Bruce Brown whatsoever. He just doesn't shoot the ball well enough for me to be, for him to come in and be the starting 2 guard. And if he's not that, then he's just another piece who plays 15 to 20 minutes off the bench. Few injury issues recently. That's not a player for me whatsoever. So out of those guys, like Olynyk, I could see Dante, I could see Vooch, I could see Kuzma, but again, like, if you make the Schroeder trade, getting Vucevic and Kuzma, getting any player that's over 20 million then becomes really difficult. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in regard to this trade speculation. Who do you want? Because there's so many different players being linked that it's actually really hard to decipher what deal the Warriors should try and make here for what player with what team. It's really fascinating. There is going to be something done here, but whether the Warriors pull the trigger on the right move at the right time is going to be interesting. Because again, it's balancing up. You need to there's so many holes really right now that you probably need to try and address them straight away. But again, you don't want to rush into something if it's going to impact your ability to do something better down the line. But I don't know. It's going to be. I honestly don't know. I think, going all out for Jimmy or LeBron, it sounds good in theory, and getting another star, yes. But again, like, giving up this version of Wiggins for that, is it worth it? And then you can look at, Schroeder, Cam Johnson, whatever else, and think, yeah, they would upgrade the team, but do they upgrade the team enough in order to be, legitimate title contenders? That's the question. So again, let me know what you guys think, who the Warriors should be targeting here over the coming weeks. Sunday's going to be a big date, December 15, with DeAnthony Melton being trade eligible. Same with Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson. Basically everyone on the Warriors will be trade eligible, aside from Steph, who, of course, had that $62.6 million contract extension during the offseason, which means he cannot be traded until next offseason. Not that the Warriors are going to trade Steph Curry anyway, although I have seen a couple of things on Twitter about people saying, well, should they just go in the completely opposite direction instead of being buyers, be sellers, and actually trade Steph, Draymond? That's just not going to happen, and it can't happen because Steph signed that extension anyway. So Moses Moody's the only other one really who's obviously got that poison pill contract, which means he's eligible to be traded, but it's far more difficult given the Warriors. The outgoing salary for them would be his $5.8 million. The incoming salary for any team would be the average between this year's contract and his extension, which is around about $11 million per year. So basically, he would have to go to a team that has a little bit of cap space. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching or listening. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, again, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. Warriors play the Dallas Mavericks on Sunday. Clay back at Chase Center again. Looking forward to that one. Hopefully the Warriors can fire up and find something particularly offensively. I'll be doing a post-game live after that one. If there's any more like notable trade stuff between now and then, I'll certainly jump back on the podcast and speak about it. But until then, have a great weekend.